Today, 85% of Chicago's black population live in ghettos. What the black man who leaves the South faces when he comes to Chicago is described by the Midwest Director for the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, John McKnight.
In the South, he knows who the man is, the man up there on the hill in the big white house. And when he comes to a city like Chicago, it's much harder to determine who that man is. It's such a complex society. It's a different man who controls the house from the man who controls the job, from the man who controls the welfare, from the man who controls the hospital, from the man who controls the school. And I think what's happening is that he comes rather quickly to the conclusion that the man is all the white men. Not being able to discern his specific captor, he decides that all people with white faces are his captors. And to the degree that all white people are engaged in supporting the systems of separation and racist institutions that we have in the North, that judgment is basically accurate.
The purpose of this channel is to wake black people up to the realities of our situation in this country and around the world. In order to change our circumstances, we first have to change our mindset. We first have to free our minds, but that may be the most difficult part because we've been conditioned to believe that this is the way it is and this is the way it will always be.
How do these institutions function in a racial way?
When we develop any kind of a system that by definition excludes people who are poor, inner city, limited education people, we are saying black only. We might as well put the sign back up because it's the same thing, same bag.
This first clip was filmed in 1968, but everything he's saying is still true today in 2021. You can drive down any predominantly black neighborhood and see the same scenes playing out in real life. Nothing has changed since this was filmed, and nothing will change until we change the way we view our position within this system.
But they sit residing in a system from which they take full benefit, a system that defines them in and defines black people out. We are going to have to face the fact that we are not a community. A community is where a lot of people develop mutually beneficial relationships with each other. And our racist institutions and the political boundaries of our cities define black people out of the community. White people will sit in their suburban homes and watch their television programs and hear about all of these laws that are being passed. Many of them are beginning to wonder, well, what is it with those colored people down there? Why are they so upset, all this wonderful stuff that we're doing for them? But we aren't focusing on the black man living on the block. He lives in a two-flat on that block, and he knows what the circumstance on that block was 10 years ago. And he knows what it is today, and he, too, has heard about all of those programs and laws being passed. But the hard fact of the matter is that things are not changing for him. It's no wonder that the white population and the black population are pitted against each other when the black man knows that the change is not coming, and the white man thinks that major efforts are being undertaken when they are not. So I don't think anybody should be surprised when one sees the black people in an open attack on the system, because I suspect that they don't see that there is any other realistic alternative.
This last statement is not true today, because there are realistic alternatives if we're willing to free ourselves from the system. Sometimes, in order for black people to receive the message, it has to come from a white person. And what he's saying is that the black person's situation is not changing, and he is correct. Living within this system, the circumstances of black people will be dictated by white people. The dominant society makes the laws to keep white people in a dominant position and keep black people in a subjugated position as second-class citizens in a country built on the backs of black people. Later in the video, you'll hear white people speak on the privileges they've been given by the system and how it's set up to benefit them, even to the point of being given privileges that they didn't even ask for. And in contrast, how it's to the detriment of black people.
If I do nothing in this world because it is set up for me and mine, and because the systems operate for my benefit, then I am perpetuating that system. I am letting it go on. And I am benefiting every day from it.
To be white means to be a member of a dominant racial group in a society that I consider white supremacist. And to be white in a white supremacist society, not just a racist society, because that's almost too generic, to be white in a white supremacist society is to be able to have the luxury of oblivion, to be oblivious to the injustices, to be oblivious to racial privilege, to be oblivious, frankly, to one's own identity. So it is, in a sense, to be invisible to oneself.
Now, I know there are privileges that I enjoy simply because I'm white.
Every minute of my life, I'm aware of my white privilege, of the fact that I have a white skin, and that with that white skin comes along a whole mess of privileges that I have, and I don't ask for them, they just are there.
White privilege is probably the freedom to move through the world fearlessly in a way that black people cannot move through the world. That you can take advantage of opportunities with much less fear and an assumption that you'll be treated equally with all other white people.
Part of it is not having to even think about it. And so in a way, it's sort of like the privilege of having that space in your mind free to think about other things and be concerned about other things.
White privilege is being able to walk into a department store and not be followed by the detective.
You basically get to say what you want to, be any way you want to. You get privilege. You don't have to work as hard. You can slack off in jobs and still get promoted and still not have to worry about somebody coming after you. So whiteness to me is about privilege and access to information systems and people and power that you didn't earn.
I went through a time where I was poor and I had to take care of my father, and I worked with about 100 African-American men, and I was the only white male on the shop floor. And I was really horrible at this job. It was a metal grinder. I'd grind too much of it. I'd make big indentations. I was constantly messing up, and I was sure I was going to get fired. It was just a matter of time. And about 6 months into the job, the boss and a few of the managers come over. They're all white men. And I thought, this is it. This is the day I'm getting fired. And they came over and told me that they've had their eye on me and they think that I'm management material. I said, what? And they said, yeah, you stick around for a while and we think you've got potential to be a manager here.
When I walk into a bank, or when I walk into anybody's neighborhood, or when I walk into anybody's store, that I'm acceptable, that I can go anywhere I want, and I'm seen as an acceptable person. And the reason I am acceptable is because I'm white.
It's the ability to walk into the bank in Savannah when we were ready to build our house and borrow $100,000, and neither one of us were working. I mean, that to me, that is just so incredible that we could do that.
When I drive down the road and I get pulled over by a police officer, it's probably because either I've broken the law or I'm getting a flat tire and the police officer's going to tell me I'm getting a flat tire.
Well, when I get pulled over, I don't get tickets, you know. I'm a white woman, middle class, in a minivan. I get pulled over all the time for speeding. And it's almost become a joke. And then, you know, the police officers apologized to me for pulling me over, you know. And I know if I was a person of color, you know, that wouldn't happen, you know. I know that I would be pulled over a lot more if I was a person of color because I speed every day. And so I get stopped, they look at my license, and then they let me go, you know?
I've experienced whiteness on the 3 occasions that I've been pulled over by law enforcement driving a car. One time I ran a red light, it was turning red, right? Another time I was speeding, and another time I had a headlight out. And every single time I got off with a warning. I never got a ticket for any of those things. It was privilege and whiteness, therefore, that helped get me off. And I think for the average person, it would be whiteness that would allow me not to even have to think about why.